about some news of energy production in the human body. As you can see, people are walking all around campus, some even skateboarding occasionally. And it's not because of their young bodies allowing them to do so. Deep in our body cells, they are constantly processing the food that we eat. Therefore, we can have as much energy as possible. To go more in depth, we'll show you on the drawing board.
Hi guys, it's great to be with you. I'm Jessica Acosta on the whiteboard. And as introduced earlier, glucose, in order to enhance our body's energy. Glucose, by the process of glycolysis, is then transformed into 2-pyruvate. These 2-pyruvate then are entered into our Krebs cycle, which is in the mitochondria of our matrix. The matrix of our mitochondria. The matrix is then where the Krebs cycle happens, or also known as the citric acid cycle. Let's break down the citric acid cycle. To save us time, I pre-drew the whole entire cycle. Let's go through it. As a pyruvate enters into the cycle, it is a 3-carbon molecule. When it joins with a coenzyme, it loses a carbon and is turned into acetyl-CoA. The acetyl-CoA is then binded or mixed with or merged, let's say, with the oxaloacetate to perform a citric acid, which is a 6-carbon molecule. The citric acid then creates an isocitric acid. This isocitric acid is then oxidized to create alpha-ketoglutarate. During this process of oxidation, we lose a carbon dioxide and we input NAD to create NADH. NADH is very important for the next steps of glucose processing to create much more ATP. We'll go in depth of that later. The alpha-ketoglutarate is then processed again, but it just loses a carbon. And during this cycle, we get succinyl-CoA. Succinyl-CoA is then transformed to succinic acid, but it gets a little rough. To succinyl-CoA, H2O is added and breaks down the coenzyme A, and that coenzyme A is then added to NAD and produces an NADH. During this process, we also add a GDP to get a GTP. It's also known as guanine triphosphate, which is equivalent to ATP because during the breakdown of this GDP, we get a DP to break it down and the phosphate transfers over, creating ATP, which is our body's main source of energy. Continuing, the succinylic acid is then oxidized and creates an FADH2 from FAD to create fumaric acid. This fumaric acid is then mixed with water, or H2O, and creates a maluric acid, which is a 4-carbon molecule. This maluric acid is then oxidized to create an NADH molecule, another one of our important ions, from NADH to create oxaloacetate. And again, this process happens twice because we have 2 pyruvates. After the cycle has gone twice because of the 2 pyruvates, we end up with a net gain of 2 ATP 2 FADH2s, 4 carbon dioxides, and 6 NADHs. These 2 ions are then moved into the electrotransport chain to create 34 whopping ATPs. Our bodies definitely need the citric acid cycle because we need to produce the coenzymes NADH and FADH2 so that our bodies can get the most out of our glucose. Just so we can be energized for the sports that we play, walking around the campus, and maybe even writing a long paper. Either way, energy is vital for our survival. So make sure you eat your veggies, your fruits, and all your important food groups for every day to have a healthy and